CNN has just published a story, and I'm telling you this about a news story that's just been published. I'm not expecting you to know whether or not it's true or not, but CNN just published a story alleging that the intelligence community provided documents to the president-elect last week that included information that, quote, Russian operatives claimed to have compromising personal and financial information about Mr. Trump. These documents also allegedly stated, quote, there was a continuing exchange of information during the campaign between Trump surrogates and intermediaries for the Russian government. Now, again, I'm telling you this as it's coming out, so, you know. But if it's true, it's obviously extremely serious. And if there is any evidence that anyone affiliated with the Trump campaign communicated with the Russian government in the course of this campaign, what will you do?
Senator Franken, I'm not aware of any of those activities. I have been called a surrogate at a time or two in that campaign, and I did not have communications with the Russians, and I'm unable to comment on it.
Very well. Without divulging sensitive information, do you know about this or know what compromising personal and financial information the Russians claim to have?
Senator Franken, allegations get made about candidates all the time, and they've been made about President-elect Trump lots of times. Most of them, virtually all of them, have been proven to be exaggerated or untrue. I would just say to you that I have no information about this matter. I have not been in on the classified briefings, and I'm not a member of the Intelligence Committee. So I'm just not able to give you any comment on it at this time.
Now from Capitol Hill, Democratic Senator Al Franken of Minnesota. Senator, thank you for being on the show this morning. I'm wondering if you look at the conversation you had with Senator Sessions just a bit differently this morning, and what's your take?
Yes, I do. You know, I asked him, there had been some breaking news as we were recessing for a while in the hearings, and when we came back, it had broken that members of the Trump campaign had met with Russians. And I asked him, since he was, these were hearings for him to be Attorney General, what would he do if he learned that members of the Trump campaign team had been meeting with the Russians? And he didn't answer my question, which probably should have been, I'd recuse myself. But what he did was, instead he pivoted and said, well, I was a campaign surrogate, or considered one, and I never met with the Russians.
Right.
And that is at best extremely misleading. Here we are.
But let me ask you this. So you say it's at best extremely misleading. I don't want to be too harsh here, but if you just look at it on the page, I'm saying this is a lawyer, I mean, it looks like a lie. It looks like perjury. It looks like whatever you want to call it.
What's your gut?
And he volunteered the information, which seems all the more damning.
Yes, and that's why I mentioned that. When I say the most charitable interpretation of that would have to mean that either he forgot, didn't remember meeting with the Russian ambassador, which now that I've learned it's twice, is very hard to believe, or was saying, well, I met with, but not about the campaign, which he's now saying, except in between saying, I didn't talk about the campaign, what came out was, well, oh yeah, I talked to the Russian ambassador, but I don't remember what I talked about. Well, which one of the three things is it? Right. Do you not remember what you talked about? If you don't remember what you talked about, then you don't remember that you didn't talk about the campaign.
Yep.
Senator Franken, it's Willie Geist. Good to see you this morning. If we rewind the tape and you asked that question, and Senator Sessions at the time said, actually, Senator Franken, I did meet last year twice with the Russian ambassador, once at the Republican convention, once here in Washington. I met him as a senator. I met him as a member of the Armed Services Committee, and we discussed foreign policy, foreign affairs. Would that have raised red flags for you, or would that have sounded like a routine meeting?
Well, I'm not on the Foreign Affairs Committee, but I think we've learned today that the Washington Post asked a lot of members of the Foreign Affairs Committee, none of whom, including Chairman McCain, have met in the last year with the Russian ambassador. He met twice. This is pretty suspicious. I certainly would have said you need to recuse yourself should there be an investigation of this incredibly serious interference by a foreign government, electronic warfare against the United States of America by this other superpower.
So, Senator, where does this go from here now with this new revelation? What's the next step in your mind?
Well, in my mind, Jeff Sessions should clarify some of this. As I said, this is now these are contradictory statements, and I think that he should immediately recuse himself from any of this. I think that we should have a special prosecutor that is appointed by not by Jeff Sessions, but not by anyone with any ties to the campaign. That we need an independent special prosecutor.
Senator, your colleague Elizabeth Warren, also Nancy Pelosi, have called for Attorney General Sessions to resign. Do you agree with that?
I think that what should be forthcoming is the Attorney General coming forward, answering questions about this, and coming forward with the truth. Because, again, he's contradicting himself, and for him to say, or for their spokesman to say that he had no recollection of his conversation, and then for later to say, well, I did talk to him, but we didn't talk about the election, that's contradictory. And his responses to me weren't accurate. So I would like to see him answer questions at a press conference, and I'd like to see, and then we can decide whether he should resign or not, but he certainly, at the very minimum, should recuse himself. This just makes common sense.
Right.
He must recuse himself from any investigation the FBI is doing, from any investigation at all into the ties of the Trump campaign to the Russians, as the Russians were interfering with our democratic elections.